And with the only cast member who has a date currently, here's Pick Boy with today's SpongeBob personal pick.
Thanks, guys. I'm here with PJ, and PJ just told me that he's a huge fan of me. Who isn't? You have a SpongeBob personal pick, right?
Yes, I do.
Which episode is it?
The one where SpongeBob can see into people's dreams.
That is a good one. SpongeBob seeing into people's dreams. Roll it! Point to the camera and go, roll it.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this very special 145 episode of Petey's Awesome Guest Battle. Now, let me tell you why this is a very important episode, and I'm going to tell you that in a minute. Fooled ya! Now, before we introduce tonight's special iconic guest star and why this episode is so special because of this man, I would like to introduce tonight's special roundhouse powerhouse of co-host this evening. First off, the man who is the Ed McMahon to my Johnny Carson, Mr. Christopher Petey.
Hey, yo.
Did you still patent that, by the way, Chris? Did you get that patent? You know, he has that hi-oh. You got to patent that hey-oh, man.
You know, as soon as I can actually talk to some lawyers and to, like, really give me the right answers of what I'm looking for, I'll see if I can make it happen.
That's so long as they don't send a cease and desist. Introducing tonight also from the land from down under, Miss Jessie Devine.
Hi.
So good to have you here, Jess.
I know, right? Same to you too.
And we got another gentleman, but this one's from Johnny Old England, Mr. Kwame Jacobs.
Yo, what's up, guys? It's been a very, very long time since I've been back here, and I'm just glad to be co-hosting with the others again.
We miss you, buddy. And I'm so good.
You too, Pete.
And of course, we're not going to forget co-host for this evening, my pal, Dan Romano.
Hey, Pete, glad to be here. Glad to be here for the big one. This is a huge episode. Plus, we're getting close to 200. So, again, glad to be here. Thanks for having me, Pete.
Thank you for coming. Now, I just want to say something about my guest star here tonight. Let me just say that this episode is special for this reason, and it's because of this man. 20 years ago, this kid was on You Pick Live. This 15-year-old was on You Pick Live. He was picked, and I was interviewed by my guest star here tonight. This gentleman has hosted many different TV programmings, including Brainsurge, Money Hunter, and of course, he interviewed me, and that is Nickelodeon's You Pick Live. He is, of course, one of my favorite superheroes, and always Pick Boy will always be number one in my heart. My guest at this time is Mr. Jeff Pick Boy Sutphen.
Yeah. Hey, first of all, thanks for having me. This is the first time I've ever worn this t-shirt. This is the original
so cool.
logo, the original Pick Boy logo. This was before your time too, buddy. Before your time. Hey, guys, thanks for having me. I think let's clear up right out of the gate that everybody knows that the 145th guest is always the best guest. That's the one that everyone hopes to get. So I'm super psyched to be in the 45th spot. So thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you for having us. And of course, we're going to dive into the questions, sir, because and I was actually thinking about doing like a nod too, like in the intro where, like you said, remember when you said PJ is a huge fan of me, who is it? I was thinking about saying, my guest star is a huge fan of the show. Who isn't?
Exactly. Who is it? Just like you said to me, I said to you out on the street, he's a huge fan of mine. I'm a huge fan of you guys. I mean, you guys have been doing this forever, and you guys kick some serious butt. So congratulations on getting this far.
Thank you. And I just can't believe, 20 years ago, like I had, you inspired me like to take up journalism. So I have to thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. And I've always said we started You Pick Live in 2002, and that's kind of always been my catchphrase: corrupting the youth since 2002. So.
With that, one of the first questions I have for you, and this is going to be a typical cliche question, is how or when did you get your first big break or start into hosting TV shows? Take us there.
You Pick Live was pretty much, my big break on camera. That was. I'd always kind of like goofed around in front of the camera, didn't take it too seriously. I was a producer behind the camera, and that was what I went to school for. It's what I love doing. And so I got hired on You Pick Live as a segment producer. So when they were putting the show together, they said, "Hey, we're thinking about doing this picking superhero. Would you want to do it?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." I mean, we really were kind of just every day making it up as we were going along. It was never like, here's the character description, here's what it's going to be. And it was very much, to be honest, and I'm sure you guys have heard me tell this story before. Pick Boy was really kind of created out of legality because the Nickelodeon lawyers needed a character that could handle the business because Brent and Candace couldn't do prize reads. They couldn't say like, "Hey, this is you won a Schwinn bicycle," because that was considered sponsoring something and then endorsing something. So they couldn't have the hosts of the show endorse anything, and they also couldn't have the hosts of the show pick any kid because they didn't want it to feel like it was favoritism. So Pick Boy really came out of a place of, hey, let's just have some background character, know nothing ancillary character handle the business, and that was really how Pick Boy was birthed into the world. And Brent and I, without it being talked about, it was I don't even think we ever talked about it. We just started kind of having this silly like on-screen rivalry. Like when Pick Boy would jump out, I'd go Brent and he'd go Pick Boy, so there was like, we just kind of, again, it wasn't written, it wasn't, and we were just kind of goofing around, and one thing led to the next. And I think a large portion of Pick Boy's popularity obviously came from, he's going to be popular, kids are going to scream for him because they want to go to the prize wall. Like I had that going for me, and I looked great in tights. So no, but I mean, like I said, it was one of those things we never expected it to be what it was going to be, including myself. And that was really kind of, to get back to your question, what was my first big break? Pick Boy was really the big break.
Very cool. And I still remember when I'll actually tell you a funny story though, like that happened on that day though, because originally I was in the city with my sister, and originally we were actually going to be in the crowd for Total Request Live, and they were full, and I jokingly said Carson Daly doesn't like us. we ran into you guys actually. I remember you had the microphone in your hand. I saw you from a distance, my sister and I, and my aunt and uncle, and we saw you from a distance, and you had the camera. I was like, oh man, I'd do anything to get on that show, and like lo and behold, then magic happened.
Yeah, we would, that was the beauty of shooting in Times Square. Having the heart of New York City right at your doorstep was awesome. So we would go outside every once in a while and shoot segments out there. And that was at that point in time, hey, let's get out there. What was it? The SpongeBob personal pick, right? Was that what we were doing? Yeah. And that was super easy for me to go out and get that kind of stuff and rolled into the show. And that was shooting in Times Square, like, and running into, having that fan experience with you was, I know you're like, oh, this is so awesome. Like, that was awesome for me. Like, to be able to go out and be in Times Square and have, like I said, the biggest, greatest city in the world, and people come up to you and be like, oh my gosh, really? Like, that was such a crazy thrill to have that interaction for me. I remember, doing that stuff. There was a moment in my career at UPick Live where I had the recognition of like, holy crap, like this is more than just a job. This is more than just a paycheck, which, all of a sudden it was more rewarding for me because I saw we'd have fans come up to us in Times Square and go, oh, do you remember the episode where you did this? And then you said this, and Antonio said this, and then Candace did that. And I'm like, that was a live show. We never had reruns, and these kids could say lines verbatim. And I was just like, holy crap, like we're really kind of connecting here and having a thing. And that was a really cool experience for me. And then right at the end of UPick Live, when we took over the big Jumbotron in Times Square and we rolled stuff in on that. And again, that was like, we were on TV every day nationally. But like when you're on a Jumbotron in Times Square, like that's pretty cool. Like I have pictures of me standing in front of like myself on the Jumbotron. That's just awesome.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong here, Jeff, but I remember because we shot that in May of 2005. Didn't because I know UPick Live I believe was from 2002 to 2005. Was that the month that it actually? So was that like one of the very last one of the last episodes?
Yeah, we finished in May of 2005, and I think we finished. And then a few days later, went down to Orlando, Florida, where they were opening the Nickelodeon Hotel, and we helped open that, which was super cool. And that was kind of the end of the UPick run. But we did over 400 episodes, We were still. It was a very emotional moment to finish the show because, like I said, you've done 400 episodes, over 400 episodes. At that point, we're all family. Pretty much everybody from day one was there all the way through. There was only like one or two people that switched out, and they left because they had like a job offer they couldn't refuse. But like that just showed you how special that show was, that everybody wanted to stay on that show and everyone wanted to continue it. And so when it ended, it was a very like big emotional cathartic, excuse me, that's the word I'm looking for, experience. But if you watch that last segment, man, I'm barely holding it together. I can't look anyone in the eyes because I knew if I did, I'd be like, brr. I'd just completely lose it. But it was it was an awesome experience. It really was to do that show every day.
And I always said this too because the people, like the voices of the hosts, and I always said for Nickelodeon it was you. I always said you and Mark Summers. Those were
oh wow
favorite hosts like growing up. Like I always, when I watch Double Dare, when I watch Guts, when I watch Figure It Out, You Pick Live, I always think of you guys. I'm like, man, these guys are awesome. Like what they do is just awesome. Like just being a host, and I see the energy, the way they're they tell. I mean, not tell a story, but the way they project to the audience is like that's cool.
Thank you. That means a lot because it's one of those things. Like I grew up watching Mark Summers, so I remember the first few times I ran into him, I was like, dude, like I grew up watching you, and I mean, he hears it all the time. And now it's funny because like I eventually crossed that bridge where people would come up to me and say that, like, I grew up watching you in my childhood, like every day after school, and it's awesome. Like I don't like, it doesn't bother me. It doesn't make me feel old. I'm just really proud that I could be that person, because like I said, I grew up watching Mark Summers, Mr. Rogers, people like that, and it's just like for certain generations and certain age groups, like I can maybe fit into there. But it means a lot from especially guys like you, true fans that are able to say that. It makes me feel extra special.
Deserve it. And I tried for years to try to get you on the show. I've been trying because I was like, how cool would this be to get the man who interviewed me 20 years ago and just go full circle?
Here we are. Tables have turned. Let's do it. Buckle up.
I just wish I had a mask like you, though. I mean, I still have the gray shirt.
Let's see. Let me get my glasses on. You mean that one? Right there?
Hey, those
That's
cool.
the original. That's the original right there.
And I tried to edit that person out. I couldn't get that person out.
It even has the little pad on the inside to rest on my forehead because it would press right on the bridge of my nose. Because it's a leather. It's not like a cloth, so it's broken in now. But that used to be really stiff, and it would so you'd wear this thing for hours, and I'd take it off and just have like a big huge mark right here and a splitting headache. Oh, heavy are the shoulders that wear the cape. Am I right?
I sent the questions. I think. Oh, Chris is back too. Excellent. Just when we've gotten to the next question, we were just about to get to the next question too. Chris shows up. Chris, what happened?
I don't know, man. I got full bars, but yeah, just like dropped the signal on me.
I sent you the
Bro, you're sideways.
You're sideways, buddy.
You're sideways.
Chris, would you do the honors of asking the next question for Mr. Sutphen?
Before Chris does ask, and first of all, call me Jeff.
Sorry.
Before Chris asks, I just want to make sure he got his order from Chick-fil-A.
Did you get?
You good? I just want to make sure you went with the limited time only spicy chicken sandwich. I hope. This is not a paid sponsorship, but it could be.
I didn't order Chick-fil-A, but earlier today I did order like a Sunny Sushi, and they're pretty good. I recommend them. So, on to our question, my question anyways. So, what are your memories of your audition for Nickelodeon doing the You Pick Live?
Okay, so this was interesting. I don't know if I've shared this before. I was hired as I mentioned, I was hired as a segment producer. So I was working on the show as we were starting to build it and create it. And there was not like hey, come audition for this. But at one point they were having some difficulties locking down what ultimately became Brent and Candace. And so at one point they asked me, they said, hey, do you want to audition for the host? And I was like, all right, like I've never really I'd never done anything. Like I said, I'd done some small little stuff here and there, like for smaller places, but nothing like this. So I was like, sure. So I auditioned to actually be the part that ultimately Brent got. And again, didn't think anything of it. I was already working on the show. I was really kind of just like, yeah, whatever. So I went and did that. And then when they said, okay, we're officially going to hire Brent and Candace, that's when they said, hey, we're thinking of doing this superhero thing. So I never really auditioned for Pick-Boy. And again, there was never a blueprint for, hey, this is what the character is. This is who he does. Like, you know, the cocky stupidity, blind optimist arrogance was, we were making that. I was making that up as we were going. And it just so happened, you know, I had a lot of chances at it because it was every day. So that was always my attitude. I you know, kind of would suit up and step out in front of the camera. I was just like, well, if I mess this up, there's always tomorrow. And so that's why it was just one of those things that if it always looked like Pick-Boy was shooting from the hip, it's because Pick-Boy was shooting from the hip. Even though I worked on the show and was very aware of the material and the content because I helped write the scripts and I helped, you know, build all the segments and everything like that, I never had time to sit and learn them. So when I was walking out on camera, I was legitimately just going like, I don't, you know, doing a live daily show, you have to be aware of the material you're doing today for the rest of the week. And then you're working 1 week in advance. So at any given time, I had 10 scripts running through my head. So 99% of the time I was making it up as we were going along.
What would you say inspired the Pick-Boy character? Was it like, I don't know, an amalgamation of like various characters you'd seen over the years, including Darkwing Duck, or what would you say?
I think Pick-Boy is a hyper extended reality of myself personally. I mean, I'm not that arrogant. But as far as just kind of that, like, there's a ton of SpongeBob in Pick-Boy. That there's very much that SpongeBob blind optimism. You know, hey Pick-Boy, your house is burning down. Great, time to remodel. Never saw the negativity in anything, and also just you know, I was always a big fan of that humor of this, like that kind of like so almost, you know, like almost dumb that you didn't see how bad things were. And then as I kind of like grasped onto that, I realized that like, no, that's a strength. Don't look at it as Pick-Boy stupid and dumb, just that Pick-Boy is all in all the time, ready to go. But I'd say, you know, Pick-Boy is definitely influenced by SpongeBob.
Cool.
And hey, people down in California could probably use that blind optimism right now.
Yeah, exactly. Unfortunately, I have way too many friends who have been affected by the fires. So it's terrible. It's awful. My heart goes out to them. I'm literally consumed by what they're going through.
And a curse to the insurance companies for stiffing the people down there.
Yeah, I really hope that, you know, for speedy recovery, and then, you know, everything gets dealt with is on the up and up, because I just think there's a long road ahead of them. So
hopefully they can recover and a speedy recovery, especially with the fires. That was terrible. What happened?
Yeah.
Aren't they still going now? I think, or no?
Sorry?
Yeah.
Yeah, the big one, the Palisades fire, I think it's about 64% contained, but then there's another one that broke out in Castaic, which is right above Valencia, which is, I used to live there. So hopefully, and again, tons of friends that still live there. So I'm kind of fingers crossed. That one broke out this morning and is spread rapidly to 8,000 acres.
That's messed up.
Yeah.
Damn.
Everything.
Sorry to hear that, bro.
I just hope that things get better, like in due time, you know, especially because I'm scheduled to actually go back to California next year in August. So hopefully things have gotten better, like, you know, because it's just unfortunate what happened.
It is. Really sorry.
Since we covered one of the questions, Kwame, ask question 8. I know this is question 3, but ask the second question you had, which was question 8.
All right. Any special you pick episode or theme episode that stood out to you?
Yes. God, it's funny when you do that many episodes. I remember probably more from the 400 plus You Pick Live episodes than from like the 120 episodes of Brainsurge or the 90 episodes or whatever it was of Figure It Out. The one that there was, I mean, there's so many, but the one that really stuck out to me is the one episode we decided we were going to do You Pick Live, like Johnny Carson and the Tonight Show.
Ooh.
And that episode to me, like we set up the late night desk. Brent was, played Carson. Candace played like the Ed McMahon. Of course, Candace was so young, she didn't know who any of the references were. So like she's doing the yes sir and all the big, Ed McMahon moves. And we had the You Pick Live Orchestra, which was headed up by Antonio on the triangle. And they were so bad. Because they actually played instruments. But we, the band was comprised of like, oh, the writer knows how to drum. Let's put the writer in there. The prop guy played the French horn when he was in third grade, so he must still know how to play. and then we're just banging on instruments. And the kids, I mean, I was laughing so hard through that entire episode. And at one point, you can see there's a segment called Stump the Band, and you can probably pull it up online. But Candace would sit with the audience, the loungers, and say, okay, pick a song and the band will play it. If they get it wrong, you win a t-shirt. And so they would pick like, B2K's Girlfriend, and the band would just play the beat of Another One Bites the Dust and make up lyrics as like, B2K's Girlfriend is my favorite song. B2K's Girlfriend. And so they would just do the same thing, like Avril Lavigne's Skater Boy. He's just a skater boy, just a skater boy. And so it was just hysterical that they just kept doing the same thing over and over. And of course the kids are like, what is going on? But it was such like it was just all for like us and the older crowd that understood what we were doing. So that one, Kwame, definitely sticks out for me.
Sweet, that's cool.
And I gotta tell you something, Jeff, before we move on though too. I actually tried, as a surprise, I tried to get Brent on the show, but his people said, unfortunately, I was going to actually surprise you and bring him on tonight, but said there was good news and bad news. Bad news that he wasn't able to come on tonight, but he did say that he's very interested in coming on in the future.
Nice. I'll put in a good word for you next time I talk to him.
Thank you so much, Jeff. And we're going to try something very, very different for the first time. We're actually going to try to do a live viewing of that episode that we were in. So let's see. And worst comes to worst, we can always edit this if, something goes airy, whatever you say. So just let me know how it is. Everyone let me know how it is coming on your end and if it's like laggy. Okay?
All right.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, let's give this technology a try. You can see.
Okay. Yeah, it just says you start showing your screen. Okay.
Oh, there we go.
See it? I see it.
I see it.
Yeah.
We're going to turn the clock back a little bit. Here we go.
All right, let's check in with the only cast member who has a date currently. Here's Pick Boy with today's SpongeBob personal pick.
Thanks, guys. I'm here with PJ, and PJ just told me that he's a huge fan of me. Who isn't? You have a SpongeBob personal pick, right?
I do.
Which episode is it?
The one where SpongeBob gets into people's dreams.
Roll it! Point to the camera. Roll it.
Roll it.
What everyone thinks.
You're a natural.
What up?
You're an absolute natural.
Thank you again for that cue. Whoops. Let's turn that off.
Yeah, I want to say this from one guy who has great hair. You're taking the cake tonight for best hair, best use of hair. It goes to you tonight.
You're making me look red, Jeff.
Your nose, Pete.
Thank you. Make me lost for words.
Yeah, well, I do want to. Kwame's a close second. I'm not gonna lie, close second. But
Jeff,
I'm a distant third tonight.
Let's continue on before I turn red. Dan, your question for Jeff.
I was looking at some of your IMDb. I saw you did Fear Factor and House Hunting. What was that like? So, did you work with Joe Rogan on Fear Factor? I'm curious.
I met Joe Rogan, didn't do the Joe Rogan years. I worked with all the people on 101 Ways to Leave the Game Show that they did Fear Factor. So I met Joe Rogan through there, but I came back when MTV, first of all, Dan, I don't know what's happened to your arms. It's freaking me out a little.
Sorry.
Thank God. I was so concerned you lost your hands.
Oh, no.
That was going to be bad news. No, sorry.
It's cool.
I when MTV brought Fear Factor back and they brought in Ludacris to host, so I worked with
Okay.
Ludacris, and that was I did for the first season. I would help do like the contestant producing, and then the last 2 seasons I was what was called a host whisperer. So like Ludacris would wear an earpiece, and I would sit in the control room and give him, snappy one-liners and stupid jokes to say. So that's if you go back and watch the Ludacris episodes, you'll be able to kind of hear a little of my humor through the mouth of Ludacris. Bless you, Kwame. Nothing gets by me.
That's pretty cool.
Oh, and then House Hunters. Yeah, that's another like one of those really iconic shows that has, this massive body of work in terms of seasons and it being a legacy property. They were going to do and I think it actually ended up going. I worked on the pilot. It was House Hunters Juniors, where it was basically House Hunters, only they did it with families and the kids would weigh in. I don't know why I did this, because they're actual kids. They're not hypothetical kids. The kids would, this is where I wanted to use it, weigh in on the choice, even though the parents are really making it. It was kind of, just put some focus on the kids. So that was really cool, to go be part, a show that I've watched a billion times over, to kind of see, help put together that. And then it got picked up for, I think, a full season. I only did the pilot though, but it was all behind the scenes. It was fun. Good stuff.
That's still pretty cool though. And the fact when you were talking about you pick saying like it reminded me, did you ever watch, I mean, you said you watched Johnny Carson and all that, so you've seen Man on the Street. It reminds me a lot of that.
Yeah.
They go up and just talk to random people. I think that's really cool. So
that was always my favorite thing too. I mean, as we talked about earlier, doing the stuff, interviewing Pete out in Times Square, that was my favorite. Like when the assignment from my bosses was, hey, go take a camera and a microphone, I was like, great. You're literally going to let me off the leash out there? That's crazy. You don't know what I'm going to come back with. No, I always love that. Like, we just kind of go out with a very rough, idea and a few beats. And it was like, let's just go and see what happens. Like, I always love doing those, red carpet events, and Kids' Choice Awards every year was like a dream come true for me. I love that chaos.
That was going to be my next question. So would you go to the Kids' Choice Awards? Would you be like, that's so cool?
Yeah, I did. I think I did 10 years straight of doing the pre-show. And then they eventually started doing a backstage show, which I did in there. So I think I probably did maybe about 6 of those. So like while the show was going on, I was backstage getting people that were coming on and off the stage and interviewing them and doing stupid stuff. And then we would do a wrap-up show after. So like after the show was over, we would do like a recap. Like, here were the best moments of the night. Here's the best slimings. Here's the, the award goes to, and we would just do all kind of You Pick Live type wraparound stuff that would get, interstitially placed throughout whatever programming was happening. But I did the 10 years straight of that. And then 1 year I didn't do it. And then they brought me back, I think, for another 2 years to do like some smaller stuff. Cause I'm old now, but,
No, you're not. You look
grays. I got some grays here going. I don't see any grays.
Guys, we're talking about Jeff. Jeff looks great at 20.
You're literally you're not even old to us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, I knew this was going to be a great podcast to go on. I knew it. I didn't even have to fish too hard for that compliment. No, the Kids' Choice Awards was always the highlight of my year. There's only one thing louder on the planet Earth than the Kids' Choice Awards, and that's the space shuttle taking off. Because for 90 minutes, it's just an auditorium full of kids just going, because it's just insanity.
But Jeff, I never like my sister and I we used to watch the Kids Choice Award every year, and the one thing I always wonder though, like I know it's like it's the Nickelodeon Kids Choice Awards, but how come they always had like for best TV shows they always had The Simpsons as a nominee when it wasn't even a Nickelodeon show?
Yeah.
It's all about, it wasn't just the Nickelodeon, like, hey, let's highlight Nickelodeon stuff. It was really about, being like the Oscars for kids. So it was, let's
Yeah.
highlight everything that kids are watching. So there was a lot of, there was even Disney stuff,
Yeah.
and Disney stuff would win too. And that's, like, if you think about it from a standpoint, you go like, oh my gosh, why would Nickelodeon do that? I mean, Disney's like their main competitor. Like,
Yeah.
why wouldn't you do that? Let's have Disney stars on a Nickelodeon award show. We're bringing the whole Disney audience now to our channel. Like, it makes total sense. It's a win-win.
It
Plus,
is.
Kids'
some people
Choice
forget.
was,
Yeah.
and we would do really well. They would never let me on stage though. I've never been on the main stage.
Really?
I asked every year if I could present, and they were like, there was always some lame excuse. I won't get into it.
All right.
Well, here's what I want to ask you too, Jeff. Like you've been on so many shows and you hosted so many shows, though, and we just talked about Money Hunter. I believe Brainsurge was another show you've hosted, and of course, Nickelodeon You Peak Live. This is gonna lead to my next question too. Were there any challenges when hosting a live show when there's interactive elements involved, like interviewing people, or when you have to do stuff? Because at this point, it's half script, half reality, right?
Sure. Yeah. So for me, a lot of it is if you can go in with your beats. Hey, I want to ask, here's a handful of questions that I have. And then the number one thing that I always tell people, like when you're interviewing someone, the most important thing to an interview is listen. Because if you just take that advice, like you don't need to write any other questions because the likelihood that they're going to say something interesting as their answer that you're going to want to follow up on, you can just pick that up and next thing you know, you're in a good conversation. So I think some of the biggest challenges for Kids Choice Awards or You Pick Live when we were in the live stuff and you had a short period of time is you can never gauge A, what they're going to say, B, how long it's going to take for them to say it. So that is one of those things where you had to always kind of be like, all right, I got to figure out where I can interject without interrupting to wrap this out. I think one of my strengths is that I was pretty quick on my feet as far as like listening and having a snappy response. And that was very much the Pick Boy formula. Ask a serious question or serious enough, ask a serious question, let them talk and have a stupid response to what they said. Never insult them, but like that was the formula for me. Like question, listen to what they're going to say, snappy response, and get out. And it served me pretty well. But like I said, I think the number one thing was listen. If you could listen, you would do okay. And then Kids Choice Awards was a great place for me to learn. And that was because it was so high profile. It was so fast paced. It was live. You had one chance at it. And it took me a few years before I really figured out a really good rhythm of how to do it. So like, you could do all the prep you want, but as you mentioned, Pete, it's like, you might not ever know, you're never going to know what they're going to say. So one of the things that I had to really get in the habit of was, okay, I would have a list of celebrities that were going to come down the carpet. And I'd have questions that were specific to those celebrities that I would have, on standby. If they were to come through, maybe they do, maybe they don't. But then also in like your other pocket was to have the generic question that could be asked to anybody. Didn't matter if they were a celebrity or an influencer or a guy or a girl. The question, which is like, hey, it's the Kids' Choice Awards. It's the messiest night in Hollywood. There's always a good chance you're going to get slimed tonight. Or what are you more afraid of tonight? Getting mauled by a bear, hit by a comet?
Or
Like
getting
that.
slimed.
But see, that's the two obvious things. So like when you set it up, and that was always my other thing, set it up and take the left turn. And that was a type of question that it didn't matter who you had. You could ask that question to anyone. It could have been a musician, an actress, an actor, a comedian. Like it was fine. So I always had like a pocket full of those questions that were kind of my backup in case, these other questions were failing.
That way you always come prepared, right?
Yeah, and I think that's the thing is like if you can prepare, and then in the later years when I started to really understand, there's a lot of fun you can have out here, and when the first few years of doing it, I tried to control the chaos, and you can't. Like here, like this is the type of scenario you'll be. They'll say into your earpiece, "We're coming to you in 45 seconds," and you're like, "Great." And so now you're like, okay, it's 45 seconds. And you're looking and you're like, oh, okay, I see Will Ferrell. I see Adam Sandler. And then the producer comes up to you and goes, you're getting Will Smith in 30 seconds. And you're like, oh, and they give you the Will Smith card and you start like reading the card, like the questions. Okay, Will Smith, you're in this movie. And then they go, no, quit. And then as soon as you get through that, they go, oh, no, sorry. Now it's Halle Berry. And you're like, oh, so now you're looking over like the Halle Berry things, and you're like, and they're counting in your ear. They're like, we're coming to you in 15 seconds. You're trying to go to this. And then they're like, 4, 3. And then like all of a sudden Will Ferrell steps in. And it seems like no amount of preparation gets you there because it's like everything's changing so fast. And you got people talking in your ear, people talking to your face. You're looking and scanning like who's coming up, what's happening. Oh my gosh, I'm going to grab. And so there was just always that crazy, like everything is on the fly. And for the first few years, I tried so hard to like, no, it's like, it's got to happen this way. And then once I finally got to a point where I just threw it all in the air and said, it's going to happen the way it's going to happen. And I'm prepared no matter what's going to happen. That's when I really started to have fun with it. And then in later years, I learned how to, this is really a super deep dive. I've never talked about this with anyone because it's generally everyone's like, it's pretty boring. But I learned how to, like, there would be funny jokes that I wanted to say, and I could figure out lines I could say that would walk them down the path, and they would set me up so I could say the joke. And that became a game to me of like, let me see if I can walk them down the path. And that's super fun.
That's brilliant. That's so cool.
You must have been pressured doing it, man.
What's that?
You must have felt under pressure while, like you said, they were throwing everything at you.
I didn't, like I said, the first few years it was crazy. I personally love that pressure. I loved You Pick Live. I love the idea of you got one shot at this. There's no safety net. You've got to get it because there is no tomorrow. I loved that. And I've always kind of been like that. Like in high school, it was like the bigger the race, the better I performed. The bigger the test, the better I did. So I did, and Kids' Choice was that pinnacle of like, hey, there's a lot of eyeballs on this, not only audience-wise, but this is every single executive at Nickelodeon and Viacom and MTV would come to this, and they would stand there and they would watch you go. And that was like, I loved it. I loved that, having that moment.
So when you interviewed me that time, did you have an earpiece into like that would give you cues like when you were going live or no? Or like when you were being pre-taped?
I think so. Like a lot of Times Square stuff we would pre-tape. So like we would go out and we could pre-tape stuff and then have it ready for roll-in. So that way, in case like camera signals couldn't go out, but there was sometimes when we would go out live and then I would do an earpiece.
And I remember too from that when we aired, I mean, we did, I believe, 2 takes of that. And I remember how calm and cool you were. If anything, I was the one that was stiff like a brick. And I remember you telling me,
No way. I don't believe it.
I was actually moving around a little bit because I'd be saying, dude, relax, calm down. And I was stiff because I was so nervous because I saw that TV. I saw the camera. I was like, oh boy. And fortunately, it took 2 takes. I think you said, let's do another one just in case this one's not great. I remember.
Yeah. No, and so we definitely were pre-taping those ones then. So that way we were able to use the best one.
And you were so creative too, and like when they would introduce you, like I remember like with the next, like when you introduced my sister when you interviewed her, like you had the camera on the floor and you picked up the camera, and then that's what led to the segment.
Yeah, it's again like that was the beauty of it. Nickelodeon gave You Pick Live as a production a lot of freedom to do some really fun stuff. And then, especially as we really established ourselves, it was a lot of that sort of thing too, of like, hey, Pick Boy, go out and, we know you're going to not do anything too crazy that's going to get us into trouble. So yeah, we were able to do some really cool stuff.
And it was such a fun time too.
So nowadays, a lot of what you see on You Pick Live, that stuff is very standard. Like, having instant feedback. We really, I don't want to say we invented it, but we definitely in the kids space that I don't think existed prior. So we took what we were doing on You Pick Live very seriously. It was never fixed. We always, like, if the kids picked an episode of Chalk Zone, we showed Chalk Zone. It was, we let the kids vote, we let the kids pick. So a lot of when we would go out in Times Square, in the earlier seasons, it was like, hey, here's today's challenge, daily challenge. Do you want to see Brent and Candace go out and sell, in the middle of winter, sell ice cubes, sell bathing suits, or sell fans? Well, we didn't know what the kids were going to pick, so we had to shoot all 3 of those packages. We had to edit all 3 of those packages, and 2 of those packages never saw the light of day. Because if the kids picked ice cubes, we ditched the other 2. So we would do 3 times the amount of work for every single challenge to make sure that whatever one they picked, we had. So as far as like that interactive technology, we were kind of figuring it out as we were going along, and we were very, sometimes things didn't work out. Like, I think it might even have been, Pete, on that, some of the clips you were showing from that episode, like you could see like the ticker tape that would go across the bottom. I think we were calling it like Insta News or something like that, or whatever it was. But like that sort of thing, that was all stuff that like kids live on the message boards. And if you go back, this is the other one. If you look at early episodes of You Pick Live, even all the way through, whenever Brent or Candace or I are sitting in the audience with the computer on our lap, we always had a cable coming out of the side of the computer, an Ethernet cable coming out of the side of the computer. It wasn't plugged into anything, but our bosses and executives made us do that because at that point, Wi-Fi really was not widely in homes. Like there was only a small portion of the population that actually had Wi-Fi. So we had to show like, no, this is really plugged in. Look, there's a cable that's going into the wall. So like that sort of thing, we were always kind of like, because again, not only that, but like there was a small portion of the population that had a computer and a TV in the same room.
That's true. I think, wasn't it still dial-up at that point in 2000s with AOL?
AOL Online, yeah.
There was definitely some dial-up, but you did have like Ethernet connectivity, but Wi-Fi was just starting to become, a thing. And it was not for like households, it was very rare.
I remember
go ahead, Chris.
I was just saying, I'm probably the oldest one here, and I remember those days.
Yeah. I remember the first time I got on the internet. What, Jeff? You're not that old. Stop it, guys.
You're not.
You're not.
Yeah.
From your perspective, what was it like working with Nickelodeon in the early 2000s?
So I didn't grow up with Nickelodeon. I didn't have Nickelodeon. When I grew up, I didn't have cable. So I had like ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox, and PBS. Like those were the channels I had on my dial. So Nickelodeon, obviously I was aware of it. I knew of it, but I did not know really, of the full legacy. And so when I did join, it was still very, we were still very much on top of our game. And it was a really cool, like everyone that worked there was very family. It wasn't very corporate, like, the offices were just, it was like a play zone. It really was. It was just insane. And what was really cool about it was knowing that I was now part of something that was so special. And it's not until like now where you go back and are able to reflect on it and go, oh, when Nickelodeon launched and like here was the golden era, and then like stuff I've done, like they've categorized all the different eras, and it's like, oh, the time frame I was there was really still like kind of at its height, and then it started to kind of dissipate after I left. Not saying I'm the reason that it dissipated by any means. I'm not connecting those dots, and you're not going to fool me into it. But it was very cool, you know. And like I said, I didn't necessarily fully grasp how crazy awesome it was while I was doing it. I knew we were doing something awesome, but it wasn't until after. Like now, you know, you can kind of look up someone shared something with me a while ago. It was like a chart of, like, you know, the Nickelodeon time frames, and, you know, this was the golden era, the Dan Schneider era, the, you know, whatever. So
Oh, no.
yeah, I know. Bringing up all the good stuff here tonight.
We don't have to bring up Dan.
No, prefer if we didn't.
Next question.
From your perspective, how do you think You Pick Live fit into the broader landscape for kids television and Nickelodeon programming during the early 2000s?
That's a tough one. I don't think I've ever been asked that question. So there's another rock solid question. Again, this was my first adventure into kids TV, so I didn't necessarily know the impact and the importance of kids TV. I remember when I started, my parents said, "Well, do you like it?" And I said, "Yeah, but I don't see myself being there more than 2 years." And then, like, 20 years later, I'm still doing work for Nickelodeon, whether it's in front of the camera, behind the camera. I love it. I've gotten to a point in my life where I said, if all I do for the rest of my career is kids TV, I'd be the happiest man alive, because it's so cool. So again, being able now to look back on what we were doing with You Pick Live, and of course there was Slime Time Live and Teen Nick. They were all kind of that same interstitial stuff. Like, I really think we cracked the nut, and I say we, I mean Nickelodeon cracked the nut with that sort of, I guess they called it promogramming, where it was, I mean, You Pick Live was on from 5 to 7 every night. That was 2 hours. In that 2 hours, we did, you know, all those interstitials totaled up to about a half hour. So we were responsible for a half hour of programming a night. And that's a lot of work to do every day. So I look at it now and just go, like, we were doing some amazing stuff. We were really having some awesome things that hadn't been done before. And the biggest thing, and one of the things I think that made You Pick Live so successful, is we didn't have a big budget. We weren't this big flashy show, and we never tried to be a big flashy show. We leaned into the fact that everything was shoestring budget. You know, it was like, if it called for, like, oh, dance party lighting effect, our stagehand would literally go over to the light switch on the wall and go, click, 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 you know, turn it on and off. And that was the lighting effect we had. So I think, as far as, like, you look at the landscape, we were it. I mean, our ratings, I never really paid too much attention to ratings, but, like, people come to me like, you guys got a, you know, whatever, a 9.0. I'm like, oh, okay, great. I don't know what that means, but we're having fun, right? So we're having fun, and this is what work is. Not a bad day at the office.
Not at all. Now, of course, you mentioned Figure It Out too. Memories of working on Figure It Out.
Sure. Figure It Out was the hardest show for me to host. I've not because of its content. It was the first show that I ever did where it was a pre-existing property. So there was a legacy, there was a groundwork and a foundation that was already built. So even though the audience that was watching probably didn't know that Figure It Out had existed prior, and it was a new show to them, there was still, like, for me, hey man, don't screw this up. Like, this is a legacy show for them. It was the first show that ever just was handed to me. They didn't say, hey, can you come audition for this? You know, You Pick Live, I worked on it. I kind of, you know, went through the Brainsurge. They made me audition 3 times before they gave me that. 101 Ways to Leave a Game Show, I auditioned for it. Figure It Out was, hey, we're going to reboot Figure It Out. Do you want to host it? Sure. Okay, here's a contract. Like, there was no, it was finally like something like, hey, we trust you wholeheartedly. We have a great relationship. Let's make this easy. And that was very easy. The show was very hard for me to do because it was a pre-existing property. My approach to hosting shows was always kind of my playground, my rules. So you pick on Brainsurge, it was very like, hey, welcome to the show. No, that's how you got to do it because I'm the host. With Figure It Out, the exec producers and the production behind it had all done the original, and they were tied very much to that show from the original, and understandably, they were very successful in doing it. So when I said, hey, why don't we try, what about this? What about this? What about this? What about this? They're like, no, that's not how we used to do it. No, that's not how we used to do it. And that was very hard for me to kind of get, I don't want to say painted into a box, but like I was a little restricted to being able to really go full Jeff on it. I still had a great time, still super fun, still loved getting to do what I did on that show. And I will say this, my favorite moment ever from hosting any single thing I've ever done came from that show.
One of my favorite shows growing up too, and I'll never forget it. And before we get to the next question, I just want to say too, like I always like in everything, there's always a Mount Rushmore to everything. If I had to give my Mount Rushmore to TV hosts, especially male TV hosts, I would name the following people. I would name you, Jeff, as one of them, Mark Summers,
thank you,
Ryan Seacrest, and you know what? I would tie between Johnny Carson and Bob Barker.
I thank you for putting me in such great company. It's funny. I remember a bunch of years ago, I was at a Comic-Con as Pick Boy, and a bunch of years ago. This was a long time ago, and I was.
Know what year it was?
Let's see. I was probably doing. I know I was doing. I had done Brainsurge at that time, so it was probably in the 2010, 11, 12 range.
Okay, that's not too far off.
Yeah. And so I remember I was in costume. Excuse me. I was in uniform. Let's get it right. This is not a costume, okay? This is a uniform. I was signing some autographs, and there was a bunch of people around me asking for pictures or whatever. And I heard one person go, "Who is that? Who is that?" And the friend turned to the person who was asking, and with such disdain was like, "That's Jeff Sutphen. He's like the Ryan Seacrest of Nickelodeon." So that made me laugh because I felt like, I was like, all right, cool. I'm in good company.
I would actually call you the Dick Clark of Nickelodeon.
All right. I'll take that. I'll take that one over.
One of my favorites growing up. And I got another question, a fun question, because we like to have fun on the show. So we have fun, silly questions. And Kwame is going to ask a half serious, half fun one. And this is a question we ask to every guest star. And I really wanted to ask this question 20 years ago, but I'm too bashful to do it. So my co-host is going to do it. So Kwame, please tell Jeff this wonderful this question that we were going to ask all our guest stars.
So how does it feel to be a legend?
Well, you guys are the ones who make me a legend. It has nothing to do with what I've done in the past. It's the fact that you guys, the fans, have been so passionate about what we did in the past and have been able to keep it alive. I take great pride in what we've done. I'm so super proud of everything we've done. I'm beyond touched that fans like you invite me to come on a podcast. That fans out there put together retrospective nostalgia pieces and launch them on YouTube. I watch all of it because it's fun for me to look back on it, and I'm always astounded that it has had that much of an impact on the fan base, and it makes me feel awesome. It really does. I never get tired of it.
And you know what? I want to say two things before we ask our final questions and we wrap up here, Jeff. I just want to say too, like, when we did that episode and I went home, and this was 2005. I was in the 8th grade when this happened, so I got to be on New Pick Live in May, and then I had my senior prom and all the other stuff the following month. I was having a ball with that year. But I just want to say too, like, like when I came home that day when you interviewed me, I said to myself, if I ever have the privilege of ever seeing Jeff or Pick Boy ever again, I want to let him know how appreciative and thank you I was for this opportunity.
Oh, thank you. The pleasure is really honestly all mine. And I mean everything I say. Like, it's you guys that keep all those memories alive, because if it wasn't for you, I don't get to talk about this stuff. Because no one in my family is going to be like, tell us about the time you ran around in a full body leotard, Dad.
I'll do that.
Oh, kids.
Can I be honest? I've never
Sure.
actually seen you before. Because you never really appeared for me in the UK. I did watch Nickelodeon, but you never showed.
There was a UK version of me though.
Maybe I never saw
There
it,
was a
but
pick boy and a pick girl. Yeah. It was very
maybe.
short-lived. This
Yeah.
was awesome. Like if you do a little bit of digging, I think there was 5, like based on me, I was the original. I have to say that I was number 1. They made one in Italy, the UK. I think there was like a Latin version of me as well. Like it might have been Mexico. And then there was a Korean. There was 4. There was 4.
Okay, so I guess it was. So I would probably guess it was global then. Well, yeah, it was global. And
You Pick Live became global, and because of its success, and then they, like I said, they made versions of me.
Yeah,
But which was really
Other
weird to
variants.
have when I found out that there was international versions of me. That was very strange because I didn't know how to feel about that, and like in some ways I was flattered, but in other ways I was like, but wait, this like you had people audition to be me. That was such a weird, because like I said, it was never, Pick Boy was never planned. It wasn't like, here's who he is, here's how he is. It's like, oh, we made the blueprint and then you guys took it and ran with it. Okay, great.
So, what are those kids awards like anyway? I've always wondered what it's like to those lucky kids they get to be on those kids awards. Like, what are they like?
The kids in the audience?
On stage. Yeah.
Oh, okay, so yeah, the kids that would come to the show, right?
Yeah. What was that like with them?
That was one of those things that for me, I was always very aware, and I think Pete's touched on it a few times of like what an impactful thing that was. Like that one thing he did, it's led to this. Look, it led to this, right? That was 20 seconds of your life, and now it's become this huge thing, and it was awesome. I'm by no means am I downplaying it in any way, shape, or form, but like that was such a cool thing, and that was something that I was always very aware of with the kids in the audience. We called them loungers. There was always 15 loungers every episode. And I was always thought to myself, like, this is something that they will remember for the rest of their life. Because my wife always talks about when she was a little girl, she went to a taping of, I think it was called like The Magic Garden or something like that. And she always talks about, she's like, I was 3 years old and I went to this. And I was like, that's a memory that stuck with her. And I looked at that and said, everyone that comes to this lounge every day and hangs out, like they need to leave with that same experience. I want them to go home going, hey, I got to do this. I got to see this. I got to be part of it. So no matter how tired I was, no matter if I was just like not feeling well in between commercial breaks and stuff, I made a point to, because I wanted to, not because I was like, oh, look at me, I got a heart of gold. Because I wanted to, like and that was also something, I would use it as a chance to try out new stuff and work. And one of the things I get even today is like people say to me like, oh, you're so good talking to kids. That's because I took the time to talk with kids and learn like what interests them. And what I realize is we don't give kids enough credit. Kids do pick up and understand a lot more than we think they do. And you don't need to talk to them like, well, aren't you so cute? You can talk and be like, oh man, I think you're awesome. And that was always my approach. Like I talk to kids the same way I would talk to you guys. I talk to my kids the same way I talk to you guys. And that was to your point, Kwame, is like, I think is super special. Like I think that thing can get lost real quick of like, yeah, hey, we got 15 kids here. Those 15 kids are my battery for the day. Their cheering, their screaming, their excitement gets me going. And if you can't get excited for that, you're in the wrong business.
Totally.
I think that's really nice what you're doing too. I think because you're right on that. A lot of it, like that 15, 20 seconds literally changed Pete's life, but it's the same thing. Like nowadays they still talk down to kids. So it's refreshing and nice to hear that you don't, to this day, still don't talk down. You talk with them, not at them. And and just there's nothing like that nowadays. And the fact you're so kind of, if I may say, you're very cool and humble about it, which again you don't see that much nowadays. So I appreciate that, and just that it's really cool. Again, we need more of that nowadays. So it's really cool and refreshing to hear from you, and just like especially the stuff with Nickelodeon we know now. But thank goodness you were never part of that chaos. Like again, you're a cool dude, and
thank you.
It's really cool.
I love hearing you say that, and that's the confirmation for me to know that what we were doing was special, and I was doing it well. Is because like when I can hear those sorts of comments, like I remember when I got hired for 101 Ways to Leave a Game Show. After I got the job, I came into the conference room. We talked about the show. They explained everything, and they said, "Do you have any questions for us?" I said, "No, I'm good. I understand it all." And I said, "You know what? I do have one question. This isn't me fishing for a compliment." I said, "Why'd you pick me? I mean, this is a major show. Like they could have had anybody." And I said, "Why'd you pick me?" And they said, we auditioned everybody. We went to New York, LA, Chicago, Miami. We talked to celebrities. We went all over. The reason we went with you is because we like the way you talk to people and not down to people." And that was, again, that confirmation for me of going, okay, someone's taking notice that like my system seems to be working here. And you know, if you try it, you'll realize like, oh, hey, like you can have a normal conversation. It doesn't have to, you know, your reference points might be a little different, but you can, I mean, every kid watches TV, every kid watches stuff online, every kid watches movies. Those are three things right there you can talk about, you know? And again, if you just let them talk and listen, you'll be fine.
Plus, you're expanding their minds too and opening them up to new different things. Like for me, I'm a Power Ranger guy, but what got me is just seeing the martial arts and the behind the scenes stuff, and I watched Jurassic Park growing up and seeing the behind the scenes of that got me into filmmaking. So seeing stuff, what you're doing, like you don't know what impact you see the impact on people, but I'm sure there are hundreds of others out there that you don't know you've impacted in some way. And that's, you know, I hope like they tell you like Petey, because this is huge, well, but
that's why I'm saying like this is one of those things that, you know, I think there's people feel like, hey, people like me aren't obtainable to have on, like, dude, if you can get a hold of me, like I love doing this because like I said, it's you guys who are the ones that keep it alive. It's you guys who keep the legacy of Pick Boy and You Pick Live and Brainsurge, all that stuff. It was like, you know, without you guys, it doesn't exist.
But you made a positive impact, is what I'm saying, and that's great. You know, we need because people nowadays, they're like sometimes they leave a negative effect, but you're a person who left a positive effect, and that's great to see.
Thank you, appreciate that.
You're welcome.
And I'm gonna ask a question, one of my questions too. I just want to say, Jeff, like there's I just when doing this interview meant so much to me because like I said, it's 20 years in the making, it's full circle, and Chris and I are big wrestling fans, and there's a wrestler who actually, and I kind of say, I tell a funny anecdote where like it's his story and my story are very similar, where like we got to meet someone, like for instance, the guy's name is Maxwell Freeman. He got to meet his wrestler in 2009. This was him in 2009 with that wrestler CM Punk. Then years later, they wind up working for the same company, and this is them now. So, like, the point I was making here is like it's so cool, like the fact that this is 20 years in the making. That's you and I right there, and here we are 20 years later, like once again reunited and just having fun.
I want to be very clear. I don't want to fight you. I'm just saying. I think we should be friends.
That's a great idea.
We should definitely. The point I was making is that it's just cool. Like after years later, I finally got to see you and just finally got the interview because going on You Pick Live, that they say it takes a village, and there's a lot of people that can influence one person, and you are one of those people that influenced me, and that actually fueled me to want to do interview people, not for money, not for fame, but just for the fun aspect of it. What you did on You Pick Live, so I just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you. And again, it's awesome that I got to be part of this. It's awesome that you guys invited me on. And you meet fans, but I don't I rarely get to meet people like you who I actually had an interaction with. I mean, that is so rare for me. And so it's extra special, and it's been awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And of course, we like to have fun on the show. And one of these questions we have is a funny, silly question, and that is the catering question. Now, you've been part of a lot of production companies, and whenever I'm not on a military-like diet, I mean, there are times where I would literally not eat until dinner time. I would fast that long. So I was just curious to know, what production company had the best catering scene, and what was your favorite meal in catering?
You Pick Live had the worst, primarily because we were responsible for our own. Like, you just, you'd work all day, you eat when you could. Every once in a while, we'd have catering, but we were such a tight budget. It was like, here's a pint of pork lo mein and 28 forks. Let's see. 101 Ways to Leave a Game Show always had the best catering, especially for the last episode. Our executive producer, who is Matt Kunitz, top-notch guy, awesome dude. He would get lobster and steak for the entire crew on the last day of shooting. So that was pretty awesome.
Sounds good.
Cool. That's cool, man.
We're gonna go into some of the final questions, and before we do that, I just want to know, Jeff, were you a fan of the Pick Boy costume, or were we like, never again am I doing this?
The very first one for season 1, which had this logo, was more or less glorified pajamas. That was all one piece. That was so small on me, it didn't even zip up in the back. So thank goodness I had a cape over it, because the entire back was wide open. Not necessarily the most comfortable, even when we did make it better. But I was always, getting to be a superhero, it's not bad. It's not a bad gig. Let's be honest. If wearing my underwear on the outside is the hardest part of the job, I'll take it. It was interesting though. Like I did have routines that I could not break. So like we went live at 5, and we were live from 5 to 7. So if we back up, we start rehearsing at about 3. So by about, I think it was 1 o'clock, I would stop eating and drinking. And then right before I get into costume, one last empty the tank. and then that was it, because if I ended up having to go, like, everything was on top. You had the 2-piece leotard, then the underwear, then the belt, then the cape, then the cuffs were layered over that, then the earpiece, the microphones, and everything was wired up. So if I had to go to the bathroom, it wasn't, oh, let me just sneak into the bathroom and pull my pants on and go to the bathroom. I had to take everything off and like pretty much get naked to go to the bathroom. And it was like a 15-minute process. Too much information. Such a good story. I'm going to tell it again. Here we go. No, but it's, I enjoy, it's a cool costume. It was like I said, at times, days where I was in it for 12 hours, very uncomfortable. But the last costume that I had, they made a really awesome cape, and it really is. It's super heavy. So like at the end of the day, you're just like, oh my gosh, like your shoulders and everything from carrying it. Yeah, these are the the occupational hazards of being a superhero. I've already said too much.
And I'll say this too, before we go into the final questions here. I just want to say thank you for that interview, though, that we did. I was so grateful for that for many reasons. But one of the reasons I was very grateful, because you were so cool, you were so humble, you were so kind and so calm to me, and I was so glad you didn't Tom Green me. And by that, I mean, I'm glad you didn't put poo-poo on the microphone and try to interview me like he did.
Yeah. I'm familiar with Tom Green.
Experience, Pete?
What was that?
You actually had that experience, Pete?
No, I'm just saying I watched Tom Green when he was interviewing people off the street, and he had the microphone, and it was like, pull on the microphone. He's like, hey, can I get your word on this? And he was like, putting it in their face.
Okay.
True story.
Is there any questions you want to ask us?
How did all of you get together, especially being in all different parts of the globe?
Who wants to start this one?
I guess well, we can start once.
I will. All right. It all happened on Facebook. I was just minding my own business because I was on a group called the Storm Club, and that's when I saw Peter's videos when he was interviewing Lathan and also Vernon from Time Force and also Dino Thunder. I saw how he was doing the interviews, and I couldn't believe how he actually got them. I was wondering how did he do that, and I actually wanted to be part of it. I told him how I admired his interview, his skills, and also how he got the privilege to talk to them. And I asked him if I could be part of it, and he made it come true. And it felt like I was in a dream. First time, I was nervous. I couldn't stop moving because I just couldn't believe I was in the presence of one of my favorite Rangers. It was an honor. And the more times I've done it, my parents found out, they were proud of me. Very proud of me, and they got along with Peter very well. Honestly. Yeah, my mom gets along with Peter very well. Honestly. They get along very well, just like me and him do. And I help him out with, Rangers. Same with everybody else. We all do our part anyway.
Love you, brother.
You too. So yeah, that's how we met. Like, he's in the US, I'm in the UK, we all got different time zones.
At least one of the letters are the same.
I know, right? And also, your show, Jeff, because it reminds me of a similar show that I used to watch on Jetix years ago. It was like a gaming one. I don't think it ever appeared for any of you guys. It only appeared in the UK, but it was I think it was short-lived. It did start in 2005, and I think it ended in 2007. It was called PXG. Yeah, it was kind of like your show-ish in a way, Jeff. And I forgot what the guy's name. He was Japanese. It was pretty funny. Okay, he does like hints on gaming and other stuff as well, if I remember correctly. I remember it quite well because Jetix was my childhood and everyone else's as well. Same with Nickelodeon. Maybe there was a split chance I might have saw your show on TV as a commercial, but
maybe.
No, that was like 20 years ago.
Chris, how did you get in touch with Peter? Seems like you guys know each other the longest, yeah?
I think they did.
Yeah, that's actually true. We are the longest, right, Chris?
Indeed. So, I actually met Pete through Facebook, and at the time, I was actually promoting continuity for a TV show that we had a mutual love for, which was Gary and Mike, and it was a claymation sitcom that was made by Wilvin Studios back in 2001. Aired on UPN, only one season, but it was a great one. You can probably only find it on YouTube. I recommend you look it up sometime. It was good for what it was of its time. And when I had actually been in touch with him, he told me that he actually had some episodes that he was happy to share with me. To help promote the continuity of the Facebook page itself that I was helping to promote. And at first I was a little bit apprehensive, but then as we started talking more and more, we actually kind of found that we had more things in common, and we kind of found that we were kindred spirits. So I also, during this time, took the opportunity to reach out to some of the people who worked on the Gary and Mike series, and I reached out to some of the folks who are the writers, the animators. I even managed to get one of the voice actors, and although I didn't really do any Zoom chats with them at the time, I managed to get a few email interviews, have them answer some questions about what it was like to work on the show. And I want to say this is kind of maybe one of the things that helped kick off Petey's Awesome Guest Panel, because when I actually showed that the people themselves were easily reachable, he may have actually, I guess, had some incentive to start reaching out to other celebrities that have been part of his childhood, whether they were on Power Rangers, whether they were on Aqua Teen Hunger Force. And yeah, eventually, after a couple dozen episodes, he started inviting me on the show, and I said, sure, why not?
Cool. Nice. And Jesse, what about you?
Well, it all started sometime in the winter time when I started liking some of Petey's posts, like the Richard Cancino interview, which happens to be my favorite episode before I came along.
Yeah, Rich is a great guy.
And yeah, and Petey came across me on my DMs and made me an offer that I can't refuse, which is joining the co-hosting. And I said yes, of course.
Very cool.
I know,
And
right?
Daniel, yeah, Daniel, how about you?
We met through a mutual friend on Instagram because long story short, I'm banned on Facebook. That happened in 2019. They never told me why or for what for, but either way, we met through a mutual friend on Insta, and since we're both Power Ranger fans, that's what connected us, and the rest is history. And now I'm here. So,
There we go. Cool.
Jeff, it was so cool meeting you, and just thank you for being part of history. The facts I didn't know that that the interview from them was 2005, and now we're in 2025, so 20 years. This is huge, and again, it was so cool meeting you, and you're a cool dude, and just again, thanks for being here. This was a lot of fun.
Thanks for having me. It was great meeting all of you.
It was great learning about you and meeting you as well, since I saw the clip of you and Petey interviewing on YouTube. Thanks for making all the American fans out there their childhoods, reliving them, stuff.
Thank you.
Question I would have though is what was the set of You Pick Live like, and were there like any hidden gems or hidden features that the viewers didn't really know about?
The set was really, really small. Prior to it becoming our set, it was a storage closet. that is a true story. It was a small little closet that was like a motion capture room, and it really wasn't used for much of anything. So we cleaned it out and made it into this tiny little studio. But it was, again, by being that small and working with such a dynamic small crew, made it the success it is.
Huh.
Yeah. Was that it, Chris, or did you have another thing you want to say?
I mean, yeah, definitely just like appreciate what you've done for everybody's child is here, and appreciate what you've done for Pete. And yeah, you're just a freaking icon, man.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
What is next for Jeff Sutphen? And this is the part of the show, Jeff. This is an open mic, or you can promote, hype, say anything you want. I am passing the proverbial microphone on to you.
And mine too.
Oh, we got that one. Okay. Right now, my biggest thing that I'm focused on is I'm still working on some content for the kids. My producing partner, Tim Veggie, and I have launched a YouTube series called Windy Weatherfoot. Windy, as in, boy, it's windy out here. Windy and her twin brother Walker are the 7-year-old twins of Mother Nature, and they are coming into their powers of nature, just like their mother, and they go on these crazy adventures with all their friends. It's an animated series. We are doing all on our own. We partner with an animation studio, and we're writing all the scripts together, and we're coming up with all the stories. And we launched it almost a year ago. So there's a bunch of little YouTube content, and we're also.
You mean this? Oh, hang on.
That's it right there. And
okay.
That's our show. And we also are launching a Roblox video game alongside it. So you can find it. It's still being worked on, but it is like out there for you to go in and explore all different areas. And that's the big one, man. That's what we're really excited about doing, and taking all the lessons we learned from working on You Pick Live and Brainsurge and Figure It Out, and all the years of doing kids content. We are taking all of it, putting it into our own show, and that's it, man. Check it out. I hope all your fans check it out, especially if they have kids. I think they'll really like it.
That's good.
That's fantastic.
I love Roblox.
I got Roblox. I mean, I'm a Roblox veteran because I've been playing it since the early 2000s. So yeah, I'm a Roblox veteran.
Love me some Roblox.
Jeff, one more time. What's it called again? So, Pete, maybe you could put the link to in the description.
I will.
Okay,
It's,
wait, you mean a show, right?
It's called Windy Weatherfoot. Windy Weatherfoot. Weatherfoot.
Cool.
Yeah, I searched it up on
Jeff.
YouTube. You won't miss it.
Yeah, it comes right up.
we're definitely gonna put that in the description so that way we make sure. And my final comment before we wrap up, Jeff.
I'll do it. I'll send the link. Allow me.
Okay. Jeff, I just want to say too, thank you for not only an amazing interview that you gave us too, but I waited for years to finally give you the proper thank you, and this is going to be a one, and this is going to be a risk of giving you tons of praise. So here we go. Now, I just want to say, Jeff, that that you have this incredible gift. I mean, it's unfortunate that you don't have superpowers like Pick Boy, but you do have this incredible gift, sir. And where I'm going with this, and Chris and I kind of debate about this. Chris thinks I sound like a broken record with this, and he's half true about that. He's very half true about that, but I like to think of it as a catchphrase, and that is you have this incredible ability, Jeff, where you could take a 30-something-year-old fan and bring him way down here and make him feel like that 15-year-old again with braces and short hair and just having the time of his life watching Nickelodeon You Pick Live.
Well, thank you for saying that. It means a lot. I've always said that I have the maturity level of an 8-year-old. So it has really suited me, and I'm glad that I can pass along that immaturity and that fun time to all of you. So thank you guys so much for having me on. The pleasure was all mine, and this was as exciting for me as it was for you guys.
One last thing before we conclude here, and first of all, I just want to say, Jeff, that you watched The Simpsons, right?
I've not in the years, but yes, I'm very familiar.
I'm a huge fan of the late great Phil Hartman. You always reminded me of Troy McClure when you did hosting. So I just want to give you that high compliment too. And also, before we wrap up, everyone, we do it right, and that is we're gonna give you what you deserve, and that is thank you, Pick Boy. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Pick Boy. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you.
Pick Boy.
Thank you, Jeff.
I'm going to send you a copy of this interview when it's done and edited, and we would love to have you back on in the future for part 2. Would you be interested?
Count me in.
And also, everyone, let's pay tribute to tonight to Jeff, and let's do remember the role we did in the video. So we're going to say goodbye, old fashion. So everyone, let's go say bye now. So sayonara, guys. I'm out. Later, everyone.
See you next time.